What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So there was a lot of talk leading up to the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X when it came to their cooling solution, with a lot of focus on the PlayStation 5 with its massive heatsink and the liquid metal that was on there. Well, it looks like we now have some fairly good temperature readings inside of the system as a test was published online from Gamers Nexus, and there appears to be one spot in particular inside the PlayStation 5 that's causing some concerns with the temperatures it's reaching. We'll go over that here today. Also, Age of Calamity. Koei Tecmo announced actual sales for the game, and it makes a lot of sense why they would do that, because in just the first couple of days for this game being on the market, it's already become the best-selling Warriors game ever. And then Phil Spencer also talked about a new place xCloud will be going in the next 12 months. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure the like button helps out a ton, and if brand new here, hit the red subscribe button down below. And we're going to start today with Skyrim on the Xbox Series X. Now, Skyrim did come out on the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, and one of the big features that they were talking about at the time that Sony wasn't as fond of when it first came out was mod support. Remember, you could actually do that on the Xbox One, and then I think eventually on the PS4, but everyone on the Xbox One who picked it up started just messing around with different mods, and there was one in particular that was pretty cool at the time in 2018. However, it makes a lot more sense now with the Xbox Series S and the Series X out. This mod is uncapped frames per second. It's a simple I&I tweak that disables VSync and removes 30 frames per second cap. 60 frames per second is possible with this mod enabled, but it will not be a constant 60 frames per second. This was from 2018, and it was designed for the Xbox One, but now the Series X and the Series S are out, much more capable machines than the Xbox One, so this might be worth checking out if you're thinking about going back to Skyrim for like the 20th time, or who knows, maybe you're playing through it on your Amazon Alexa now. Is it going to come to the Series X and the PS5 as yet another release with enhancements and they resell it again? I don't know, but at least here you can actually uncap the frame rate and try it out for yourself. We also had the Golden Joystick Awards yesterday, and we had the Game of the Year, as they call it, the Ultimate Game of the Year, announced, and it was voted on by fans. And why don't you go ahead and guess which game do you think won this award? We'll actually go over here to their tweet. It says, last but definitely not least, the award for Ultimate Game of the Year, as chosen by you, The Last of Us Part 2. Once more, let's give a round of applause to the teams at Naughty Dog and PlayStation for their massive wins at this year's Golden Joysticks. They also won several other awards, but there we are, Last of Us Part 2, taking home the Ultimate Game of the Year award at the Golden Joysticks, and this was voted on, as they say, by fans, and I have wondered, we see it, there's a lot of controversy around this game, but sometimes controversy just keeps the game really in the conversation. And I guess, hey, people are going to keep seeing this game. They'll keep being reminded of the game, especially leading up to something like the Game Awards, where the fan vote is less relevant than it is here with the Golden Joysticks. But it does make you wonder at times if that controversy has just been helping it with something like fan voting at the Golden Joystick Awards. But there we are. Last of Us Part 2 took home a Game of the Year win yesterday. Oh, and we did have our Games with Gold for December 2020, and I have to say, it might be time to call it on Games with Gold, because every time we've talked about it, it hasn't been great. It's been like, what is this? What's going on here? I know, there is Game Pass, and that's where a lot of their focus is right now. But let's go over here. Let's take a look at what we have with Games with Gold. It's, let's see, The Raven Remastered. That's December 1st to the 31st. Bleed 2, December 16th to January 15th. We have Saints Row, December 1st to December 15th. And then Stacking, December 16th to December 31st. They do tell us it's a $74.96 value. And then they also tell us you can get 3,200 in gamer score. But you know it's good if they're advertising that. I think they actually advertise gamer score every single month they do these, but like, come on, Microsoft, it might be time. It might be time to just say, you know what? Games with Gold. I mean, I guess these are just optional games. It's just extra value. Maybe you haven't played the Raven Remaster or something. You're like, oh, I'll check that one out. Sure, I guess. But we've seen PlayStation Plus continue on with things like Bug Snacks. Day one on the PS5, it's just right there. You can download it and play it. but like games with gold's been lagging behind pretty bad, and yeah, it probably is just because of Game Pass. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get in the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the PlayStation 5 temperature testing. This was done by Gamers Nexus, and they did an awesome job, a very good video. I would go check it out. Just kind of going over some of the different hardware features for the PS5, especially inside with the heatsink and its overall cooling solution. And what they decided to do was take several different probes and attach them to the PS5 in various locations. Now, I was doing a video that I'm still going through right now where I was going to be measuring temperature and then kind of putting the PS5 in some weird situations, whether it's enclosed in a box or something, and maybe do something to impede its ability to pull air in, and just different situations that may or may not face the PS5 in everyday life at people's houses. But they went very far here, checking out different memory modules, checking out the back of the SoC, and they came across some interesting results, we'll say. Now, for the most part, from what I can tell, the SoC is a massive focus by Sony, and that shouldn't surprise anyone. It has this huge heatsink on top of it. We have liquid metal involved. Yes, they certainly want to keep this chip that is clocked fairly high at 2.23 gigahertz, I believe. They want to keep it cool, but other things, seemingly, were kind of an afterthought for it. Now, according to Gamers Nexus, the SoC itself, when measured from the back of the board, which it's gonna be very difficult to get a solid measurement from the top of it anyway, right on the die, you would have to rely on any internal temperature sensors when the system is either hacked and opened up, or we do get access to like a dev kit or something that give us those readings. But they saw 65 to 70 degrees Celsius over, I think it was like 5,000 or 6,000 seconds of playtime with Astro. But the big one that everyone is pointing out right now is on the opposite side. We also have memory modules, and they were able to measure a 95 degrees Celsius reading. And that is exceptionally high, is what I will say. Now, the weird thing about this, it's using the same configuration as the PS4 Pro, where we have the main SoC on one side and then all the memory on the opposite, and they just pushed it up against like an aluminum shield. They're kind of doing that here as well, but they're also cooling other things on that side, and they have this heatsink on top, but remember, the fan is on the opposite end, and it's not really getting a lot of air pulled through on that side. The air mostly is directed towards the large heatsink on top of the SoC. So what ends up happening is the memory modules, with these very small little thermal pads, not even that great, kind of left out to dry, basically. And now there is some concern that maybe that's a little too hot for the PS5 over the course of the generation. Like, will this be acceptable if it's doing this for 2 or 3 years? Will the system break down from it? And really, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, I do think that is a bit too hot to have your memory kind of sit there in the 90 to 95 degrees Celsius range. I'm a little surprised they didn't go a little further with trying to keep it cool, but maybe they did a lot of stress testing on it. They found that it was acceptable on their end and they could push these out. But I guess we'll find out for ourselves over time. And unfortunately, there's not a lot that we can really do with this because it's mostly the setup of the system. As Gamers Nexus pointed out, they could do things with the fan and the curve overall and speed up the fan, but Sony's mentioned they want it to be a quiet system, and one way to do that is to keep the fan itself running fairly low in terms of RPM. If you drop out to like the home screen as an example and close your game down, the fan will kick down into a very low state RPM, and that's just to keep the system quiet. It doesn't really matter if the rest of it is kind of hot to them. There is certainly a threshold where the fan will kick up fairly loud, but that memory is kind of just off on its own, and the big focus is on that SoC. But I'm sure this will lead to some experiments, like can you have different thermal pads on there that are higher quality and will cover the entirety of the memory chip, and who knows, maybe people will try to add another fan or do some other weird things to the system to modify it to get better temperatures out of it, but for now, we'll see if Sony has any firmware updates in mind to change the fan curve itself. Next up, let's talk about Phil Spencer, xCloud, and TVs, along with the console wars, because he was asked about that as well. This was an interview with The Verge, and we can see right here as he's asked about the TV and xCloud service. What's stopping you from saying, okay, Xbox is an app, it has minimum hardware specs, and we're just going to run it on a smart TV? I think you're going to see that in the next 12 months. I don't think anything is going to stop us from doing that. I thought what you said about the TV was spot on. What we used to call a TV was a CRT that's just throwing an image on the back of a piece of glass that I'm looking at. Now, as you said, a TV is really more of a game console stuffed behind a screen that has an app platform and a Bluetooth stack and a streaming capability. And that's correct. TVs have evolved quite a bit over the last decade or so, to the point now where, yeah, you probably could have an xCloud app that you just download on your TV and you sync up your Xbox controller and you just kind of go. Like, that is still a barrier, believe it or not. Having to hook up a Chromecast, or let's say Microsoft releases their own little streaming stick, that's a whole thing. And I'm not even kidding. There are people who don't even want to deal with any of that. They just want it to be part of the TV. You sync up the controller, or it's already synced up and you just turn it on with the controller or something and you're off and running. Like, that's it. So if they can get xCloud on TVs, as Phil Spencer says, in the next 12 months, alongside of your browser on your PC, then we're going to start to see, I think, even more movement when it comes to xCloud and actually having some legitimate adoption in the gaming industry. Oh, and then Phil Spencer was asked about the overall console wars and tribalism with like Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo, and this is what he had to say that. But especially in the console space, there's like a core of the core that have, I think, taken it to a destructive level of, I really want that to fail, so the thing that I bought succeeds. I'm saying on both sides. I'm not saying that it's all people crushing Xboxes and everybody that loves Xbox is always completely inviting to all the PlayStation stuff. I've said before that I find it distasteful, but maybe that is too light. I just really despise it. I don't think we have to see others fail in order for us to achieve the goals. That's not some kind of kumbaya thing. It's actually real. We're in the entertainment business. The biggest competitor we have is apathy over the products and services and games that we build. That is really well said by Phil Spencer. I mean, the console wars themselves are dumb in the first place, but it happens a lot. Like, if you see it online right now, Digital Foundry just gets beaten down constantly if they just tell you what the frame rate is on the Xbox version versus the PlayStation 5 version. It happens quite a bit. So it is interesting to me to kind of watch this as someone who works to just cover everything and will have all the systems and all this, and mostly just plays where the game is. Like, I'm playing Age of Calamity right now, and I have a PS5 and a Series X that's doing 4K and 120 and all this stuff, but I'm playing Age of Calamity because it's fun. That's the same reason I play Halo on the Xbox, and I played Miles Morales just recently and finished that on the PlayStation 5. Just go where the games are, but Phil's right. There is a lot of talk about something has to be bad so that the other thing looks better. It's strange. It'd be great if just everything could just be better overall, right? Like, wouldn't it be better if everything just sold well and something that had to sell poorly for something that sells average to look like it's selling better? And then the other issue is legitimate criticism can get lost in the console wars because it can turn into an argument that just gets thrown back and forth. Phil Spencer even says here in this interview that the one thing that could actually push him out of the gaming space, something that he enjoys doing so much, is the console wars. But I will say to Phil, this has been going on for a long time. This was basic stuff back in the day on the playground with Super Nintendo versus Sega Genesis. So it's been going on for a long time, and to be honest, I don't really expect it to stop anytime soon. Next up, let's talk about Age of Calamity and record-breaking sales for the Warriors franchise. We can go over here. Gamatsu had the translation and the story on this one, where it was tweeted out by Koei Tecmo. Total worldwide shipments and digital sales for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity have exceeded 3 million units. Japanese publisher Koei Tecmo announced it is a new record for a single title in the Warriors series. Remember, this launched November 20th. Yeah, it hasn't been long. I don't even know if they would have had sales from like Monday. That maybe they got a report on Monday after sales finished up on Sunday and they decided to publish it yesterday morning. That is massive for the Warriors franchise in general. Now, you had to bring the Zelda franchise in to do that, and then you also had to attach it to Breath of the Wild to get it there, but still, that's a pretty good accomplishment for them, and the game is fun. I do play it, and I see the frame rate issues, I see the resolution issues, it's pretty obvious at times, but it's a Warriors game, so it's going to depend on how interested you are in that style of game, but I think it's pretty fun. It's not as long as I thought it was going to be, but the story is there. It does build on the Breath of the Wild lore, and we'll see how interesting it really gets when Breath of the Wild 2 ends up coming back and we start seeing more about that one. But yeah, 3 million units sold. Big things there for the Warriors franchise. And it also makes you wonder, it is obviously working, because we've had, what, Fire Emblem Warriors, Hyrule Warriors, we had that on the Wii U, and that is on the Switch. Now we have Age of Calamity. What's the next Warriors game that you think they'll do in collaboration with Nintendo? Because it seems to be working, so I don't think they're going to stop, and it's pretty clear that Nintendo's franchises are strong enough to really even pull some of the Warriors franchises along to record sales. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about PlayStation 5 games already being dumped to the internet. Like the actual disc itself, you are able to rip the information from it, and then a lot of times that's how these Switch games, as an example, those leak online, they break street retail date, and then they end up being ripped from the cartridge and then posted online. That's one of the concerns we have even for Cyberpunk right now, if it will leak out that way for something like the PlayStation 4. But we can see GBA Temp had the story on this one. The PlayStation 5 has been out for only a short time, but the very first game rip has already appeared online. Infamous scene group Big Blue Box has dumped 2 PS5 games, Planet Coaster Console Edition and Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now you might be wondering, what does that mean right now? Not much, because the PS5 isn't exactly hacked or anything. Now they can go through any of the files that they want from there, and they might even just store it away for now, and who knows, maybe eventually it will be usable. But from what I remember, we also had Xbox One games getting dumped at one point, and nothing really came of the hacking scene for that system. So they never really did anything with them. They ripped a bunch of the games, but just nothing happened from it. So it's going to come down to now how secure that PlayStation 5 system is, because the PS4 was eventually hacked. That did happen. It took a little while, but it got there. So I almost wonder if the PS5 will eventually get there as well, or if Sony learned quite a bit from the PS4 and sort of worked in some extra security measures to the PS5. Ripping a game isn't that hard to do necessarily, as we're seeing it already happening. It's just going to come down to when that PS5 gets opened up, because then we might have an issue with these games getting ripped down. As you can see with Switch games, they get distributed very, very quickly if there's a reason to do so. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Michael, saying the scalpers would only continue having a field day so long as people are gullible enough to buy the PS5 at hiked up prices. So this is a tough one, because we're in the holiday season. I remember when the Wii came out, and I was working retail at the time, and we never had the system, like ever. Like if they did come in, we had a list of like 100 people that we had to start calling and have them come in and get the system. And you try to sell them a remote, try to sell them a game, and you try to pack them up with like $600 worth of stuff and send them out, right? But there were a lot of people who would come in and say, look, I got the system because I have to. It's a Christmas present. So there's a lot of holiday pressure right now on parents who are like, I got to find the system. It's $900 there. All right, let me grab that. So that is something. At least it was a little easier with the Wii, because it was $250 at retail, so it would be marked up to like $500, which is what the PS5 is going for now at MSRP. But yeah, that holiday pressure is real, and it's tough sometimes. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Well, there's Age of Calamity's massive sales, 3 million units already over the weekend, becoming the best-selling Warriors game in the franchise ever already. Also, what do you think about the PlayStation 5 temperatures? Not so much the SoC, because it seems that Sony focused heavily on cooling that part of the PlayStation 5, but the memory modules getting upwards of 95 degrees Celsius. Does that concern you with your newest game console? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.